What's up everyone, Joseph here. I have another video for you, and today we're gonna talk cameras, specifically the Fujifilm XT-3. So I've had this camera about 3 or 4 years, so it's really been through the trial and error and all the tests, and it's been with me for hours and hours and hours in rough, different terrains and environments. But this isn't gonna be like a regular review. I'm not gonna sit here and name every single spec of this thing. It's not gonna be one of those reviews. It's gonna be how this thing has helped me in my everyday life of filmmaking and coming to the point I'm at now, and just really how this camera has been my daily driver for all of these years. So this video is gonna be more so how this camera works for me. And I want you to take what I say about this camera and be able to apply it to any camera you use to create any content you want and just go with it. So if you like the videos I create, and if you're into the same things I'm into, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know, and let's grow this community. So cameras started off a long time ago. I've had many cameras before I came to this one, which is my latest daily driver, and it started off with my sophomore year of college, and it was the Canon Rebel T3i pack from Costco. Came with that camera, it came with just a normal lens, and it came with a zoom lens, and that was really how I started going. I started shooting basketball games with that. I went out on campus and shot with that, and that's what really got me into basically how to use a camera more so than the storytelling. How to take the settings and use them to the best of my potential. So with that, I've had Canon, I've had GH4s personally, I've used Reds, I've used ARRIs, I've used all types of cameras from consumer level to the professional level, and I kind of ended up with this one. My latest camera was a Canon 5D Mark IV, and that thing was great. Did great things for photo. It did basically what I needed for video, but I needed something more flexible. It dominated on the camera side, but wasn't so strong on the video side, and that's where I came to this, where it has almost equality in the photo side and then also equality on the video side. This camera's body is not like many bodies. It's kind of like a Sony body. It's more compact than a DSLR. That's because it's an SLR, but you have these like little ridges right here, so your grip's not really the same as a lot of cameras. It is completely water sealed, which is great. I mean, living in the Pacific Northwest, you deal with rain a lot. And it's got this old school film look and style to it with all the buttons and all the dials. And you're less so reliant within the screen and the buttons. You're more so reliant on these dials, from your ISO to your shutter. You have your aperture right here. You have your exposure right here. And then the only thing that's really deep in here is your white balance and when you choose like your frame rates and all that stuff. So I'm not gonna rattle off all of the goods of this camera and only talk about the goods. There is some bads, and there's quite a few bads, but you really have to search for them. And after time, you start to notice those bads where you might wanna jump into another brand or another set of cameras, but those will be focused towards the end of the video. So what's important about this camera is, that a lot of my cameras haven't had, is it's almost as equal it is on the photo side as equal it is on the video side. So you have equality throughout the board on what this thing can do in video mode and what this thing can do in photo mode. And that's what's great about this camera. Other than that, it's compact. This thing is quick. You can throw it in a bag. When you get to your prime lenses, they become pretty small, and your footprint becomes smaller when you throw prime on here. And even with my 16 to 55, your profile's still pretty small, which is great because you're not lugging around a big camera with you, or you're not lugging around 2 cameras, one that specializes in video and one that specializes in photo. So that's what's great about this thing. So the power of photo with this thing, and that's just one half of the story. The other half is the power of video, which I'll get into later. But as a photo camera, this thing's great. You have a APS-C sensor shooting 26.1 megapixels in here at the sensor. And the great thing about this is the autofocus. The autofocus is amazing, whether you're shooting autofocus pointing on something, or you're doing the autofocus with the eyeball tracking left or right, or just the total face tracking. This thing is great at that. I've had cameras in the past where I've had to strictly rely on the manual focus, or I'd still shoot and things would come out not in the best focus. And with that, it's very reliable when you have a camera that does that. But color science of Fuji is where this thing comes in. The color science of Fuji is great. It's fun to color, it's fun to play with, and it's just a color science that I'm really into. And then with that, you have these custom, when the way Fuji does things is, you're able to build into kind of the memory recalls of the colors. You're able to build in almost different LUTs. You have like your Porta 400, you have your Ektachrome, you have your Cinestill, you have your Kodachrome. You have all of those things you can do that are kind of different film rolls you can throw into a film camera, and you're able to do them right from here, which is fun because you can see your results right away and it saves a little money in the long run. So let's talk about the power of video. This is where this thing is the other half, and this is where it really, I love this thing, is the video you can do. You can do 4K up to 24 frames, 23.975, 24, 30, and 60, all in 4K. You can do 1080p at 120 frames per second, which spits it out at 120 frames per second, which is great for a camera of this size, that you can be able to get your different frame rates you want in your slow motion and all that stuff, and it still looks buttery smooth. The color profiles, again, you're dealing with the science of the Fuji colors, and especially Eterna, which is my favorite color profile. You get with that, this film looking almost yellowish glow to your footage, which is really fun to play with when you dump it in and start putting LUTs on it and playing with that. You have your things that your professional cameras have, like your peaking to basically see what you're focused on, and then your zebras to see what's overexposed and underexposed, which is basically a pro level type of setting that is built within this SLR, which is really good. And then the autofocus, just like I said, right now, like I'm shooting and it's doing the left eyeball focus or the right eyeball focus. It's just so easy, especially when you don't have a flip out screen, which is one of the negatives I'll get into. You can really trust, and at first I never trusted the system, but now I really trust it because it's very good. It's a very good system, and it's easy, it's fun, and it's trustworthy, and that's what's important with the camera. You got to trust the camera and trust the science and brains within the camera. Again, this is a small compact thing, so you can throw it on a Ronin and run through a house if you're doing like a real estate shoot. Or you can do so many things with this camera just because of the simple size of it and the lenses you have and at the size those are at. I talked about the good, I raved on the good, but there's always bads in cameras. I mean, that's how camera brands keep evolving over time, is they find the bads and they turn them into goods and they kind of advance over the years. So the bad, image stabilization. There's no IBIS in this thing, so unless you're shooting 120 frames per second or you have the most stillest hands and balance in the world, your footage is gonna come out shaky. But luckily, because this thing shoots at 4K, you can throw a warp stabilizer on it, and if you're still enough, you don't really notice, but it is one of those things where down the road I might have to go the Sony route or the EOS R route, simply because I do mostly video and IBIS is something that's very important to someone who's a filmmaker. 4K crop, this isn't full frame, and I mean, that's not always fun, but there is a little bit of a crop when you shoot in 4K. And that's just with the sensor being an APS-C and not a full frame. Low light is okay. You're not anywhere near the Sony place with low light. You're not able to bump up your ISO and just go crazy like you can with Sony, but I mean, it's good for what it is. It's a little bit better than Canon, but low light is something that can be improved. And then my least favorite thing is the LCD screen. It's got this swivel, and for someone who films just looking at themselves through a camera like this, you can't really see what you're shooting, so it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of trust within the brains of the camera body, hoping that the autofocus works just to the way you want it to work. Shallow grip, something I hated at first, dealing with a DSLR, which you have a big grip and you can really grip on the camera, but I mean, it's something you get used to, I'm not gonna lie, you get used to it. You start to enjoy it over time, and when you go back to a normal DSLR, you really notice the difference. So it's bad, but it's also, you get used to it. And then the lenses. I talk about the lenses being compact, but other than that, there's not many choices from lenses, because you just see what Sony comes out with and Canon comes out with, and like the Canon glass is far superior than most other glasses. So with that, that's my review of the Fuji X-T3. It's still my daily driver. It's still my go-to camera. It's been my go-to camera. And I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you enjoyed a review of kind of just the camera I use in my everyday life to film these types of videos and a lot of the other videos you see. And until the next video, thanks for all the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.